Priscilla and Tosin are back for the second time. How do you think it will end? With tears? Or with laughter? Let's find out. The first time Priscilla saw him awake, she didn't feel joy. Not the joy she had imagined. Not the triumphant, heart-thundering kind you read in stories. Instead, she felt hollow. He was sitting up in bed, eyes open, head turned slightly to the side. Breathing. Blinking. Alive. And looking right through her. She had been standing just outside the glass panel of the ICU door, where the blinds never closed fully. The nurses were laughing softly behind her, saying things like, "He's a miracle," and, "Some people really have 9 lives." One even said, "Poor man." No one visited for months, then suddenly the whole family shows up. But Priscilla had been there. Every day. Every evening. Long after visiting hours. Before sunrise. During exams. During rain. She didn't step inside. She didn't push the door. She just stood behind the glass, watching the man she had loved as a ghost forget her as a man. The next day, the room was full, siblings she'd never seen before, someone carrying a bouquet, a man in a suit doing a quick interview with the press. His father stood awkwardly in a corner like he didn't know what to say to his son who had almost died. Priscilla stood in the corridor again, behind the blinds, unnoticed. That's how it went for the next 2 weeks. She stopped talking to the nurses. Stopped asking if he'd asked about her. She knew the answer. She just wanted to see his face once more, in case something happened. A pause. A tilt of the head. A whisper of her name. Nothing came. When he was discharged, she wasn't there. She couldn't bear to watch him leave that place surrounded by people who hadn't been there, people who hadn't believed in him. She walked away instead. Quietly. Like a shadow exiting the room. Priscilla didn't plan to work at Allied Tech. At least not at first, but one day, weeks after graduation, she saw a headline, "Tosin Allied returns to head company after miraculous coma recovery." There was a photo, him, in a gray suit, standing beside a chrome elevator. His face sharper, older. Still him. Her thumb hovered over the image. She stared too long, then she saw it. A line buried at the bottom, Allied Tech is currently recruiting fresh graduates into its entry-level training program. She applied. She didn't expect to get in. She barely submitted on time. Her resume was simple. Her heart wasn't in it. But a month later, an email arrived. She was in. Allied Tech was glass and metal and ambition. The kind of place where people wore sharp heels and drank coffee from cups that cost more than lunch. She arrived every morning in flat shoes and silence, her ID badge heavy around her neck. She didn't speak unless she had to. She did her work quietly, like she was afraid of making noise in a sacred place. He worked on the 12th floor. She was on the 3rd floor. But fate had never been subtle with them, they passed each other for the first time by the elevator. She was stepping out as he stepped in. Their eyes met for half a breath. Then he was gone, the second time, it happened in the canteen. She was reaching for a tray. He was already holding one. She froze. He blinked. A flicker of recognition. No. His phone rang, and he turned away before she could even speak. But the third time, she had just stepped out of the staff restroom, fixing her badge, when his voice rang behind her, "You." She turned. Slowly. Tosin stood there. Frowning. "I know you." Her heart stalled. "You were, at the hospital, weren't you?" he asked. "The day I woke up." She opened her mouth. Nothing came. "Why were you there?" he asked, voice sharp now. "Who are you?" She took a step back. I'm no one." "Then why are you here?" "At my company. Are you stalking me?" The words struck harder than they should have. He wasn't shouting. But his voice was full of something colder, suspicion. Priscilla looked away. Her hands trembled. The hallway was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. "I have to go," she said. He watched her walk away without stopping her. But this time, his eyes stayed on her longer than a breath. And something inside him whispered, "She's not no one." Tosin couldn't focus that day. He was supposed to be reviewing a proposal, something about software expansion, but the numbers blurred into the margins of his mind. Instead, he kept seeing her face, the girl from the hallway. The girl with the wide, startled eyes. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. Something was bothering him, and it wasn't just the way she looked at him. It was the way he felt looking at her, like something was missing. He typed a name into the HR database. Priscilla George. There she was, intern cohort, 3rd floor, assigned to operations. Her photo was grainy, her records clean. But it didn't explain the way her presence tugged at something deeper. Somewhere beneath the coma fog and the painkillers and the half-formed dreams, her face had existed. Not clearly. But it had been there. He didn't want to admit it scared him. So, he drove back to Lifeline Specialist Hospital. The place he hadn't returned to since his discharge. He wasn't sure why. Maybe part of him was still afraid of what he might remember, or what he wouldn't. The nurse at the front desk smiled when she saw him. "Mr. Alade. Good to see you walking strong." "I'm looking for someone," he said, fingers brushing the counter. "A girl. She was here the day I woke up. Her name is Priscilla." The nurse blinked, then gave a small, knowing nod. "She came every day," the nurse said. "Before you woke up. Rain or shine. Sometimes she sat for hours, just talking to you." Tosin didn't speak. He couldn't. She brought books. Read articles. Played music. "We thought maybe she was your fiancé or something, but she never said." "She wasn't," he said quickly. But even as the words came out, they didn't sound sure. "She told one of the nurses once that she just believed you'd come back," the woman continued softly. "That you needed someone to nudge you." Tosin stood there, still as a stone, trying to match that girl to the one who looked so hurt when he accused her of stalking him. He walked back to his car, sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine. He let himself wonder, what did I forget? He found her in the break room the next afternoon. She was alone, stirring milk into a chipped mug, eyes half closed like she hadn't slept. She didn't flinch when he walked in. Just stared into the swirl of white and brown in her cup. Tosin stepped forward. The air between them felt tight. "I went to the hospital," he said. "She didn't turn. They told me, you were there every day." Still, she said nothing that he came closer. "Why?" Finally, she spoke. Quiet. Careful. "Because no one else was." He frowned. "That's not an answer." Priscilla's fingers tightened around the mug. "I saw you on the news," she said, voice trembling. "Everyone was giving up. But something told me you needed someone. Someone to believe you weren't done." He waited for more. She didn't give it. It was a beautiful lie. Carefully stitched. Just enough to explain the inexplicable. He didn't believe it completely. But he wanted to. So he nodded. And she breathed again. They stood in silence, two people tiptoeing around something fragile. "I owe you," he said finally. "For whatever it is you did." "You don't," she replied. "I didn't do anything special." But she had. They both knew it. From that day, the air between them changed. They began to talk more. Casual at first, shared elevators, quiet mornings at the vending machine. One afternoon, she helped him review a sluggish proposal, and he laughed at her brutally honest comments. She blushed and tried to walk away, but he followed her down the hall with more questions, like he wasn't ready for the conversation to end. He'd send her random links late at night. Saw this and thought of you, he'd write. She'd respond with sarcastic memes or a laughing emoji. It became their thing. And through it all, she guarded herself. Because it was growing again, that feeling she once buried. That strange, soft ache of wanting more. But she remembered the way he looked at her when he said, "Who are you?" She remembered what it felt like to be invisible. So she played along. Smiled. Helped. Laughed. They had fallen into a soft rhythm, a pattern. There were moments. Moments when their shoulders brushed accidentally and neither moved. Moments when their laughter overlapped and lingered. Moments when his gaze caught hers and stayed just a little too long. Priscilla was careful. She never brought up the hospital. Never asked what he remembered, or if he dreamed. She didn't dare speak the name that lived like a ghost on her tongue, Tiga. Until one evening, when it slipped out, they were walking across the company parking lot. The sky was soft with dusk, the kind of light that blurred shadows and made things feel more intimate than they were. He was telling her about a nightmare he'd had, something about rain and glass and music playing in the background. "You ever get dreams like that?" he asked. "All the time," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "Most of my life feels like one long dream I'm trying to wake up from." He chuckled. "That's dark. You're the one dreaming about accidents," she teased. They reached his car. He paused, looked at her like he wanted to say something else, then shook his head and smiled. "Well, thanks for listening. I know I sound crazy." "You don't," she said. "Not to me, Tiga." Silence. Her heart stopped, his expression changed. Slight. Subtle. "A wrinkle in time. What did you just call me?" She tried to recover. "Nothing. I meant Tosin. My brain is tired." "No. You said Tiga." He stepped closer. "That's not a nickname. No one's ever called me that." She froze as he searched her face, like the name had unlocked something fragile in him. "Why does that sound familiar?" She couldn't answer. Not without unraveling everything. "I must have heard it somewhere," he murmured, almost to himself. "In the hospital?" "No. Before that?" He trailed off. His hand brushed the side of his head, fingers curling slightly. "It was raining. There was a tree. And someone called me Tiga." She was crying. Or maybe laughing. I don't know. His eyes met hers again, but this time, there was something raw beneath them. Recognition. "Fear, you were there," he said slowly. "Weren't you?" And before she could speak, before she could deny or confirm or lie, he stepped back. "I need some air." He left her standing there, next to the car, with the name still trembling on her lips. He didn't show up to work the next day. Or the one after. No calls. No texts. Just absence. And Priscilla felt it. Not just in the space he left behind, but in the air itself, like a door had been opened somewhere, letting cold drift in. She went through her day like a robot. Emails. Reports. Coffee that tasted like nothing. The third day, she got home and found him standing outside her apartment. Soaked. It had just started raining, and he hadn't bothered to bring an umbrella. He looked different. Not disheveled. Just undone. "I remember," he said. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I wasn't sure at first," he continued. "I thought I was imagining it. But then I saw the almond tree. In a dream. And your voice, calling me back." She opened the door wordlessly and let him in. Inside, her apartment was warm, quiet. Small. The kind of place where memories didn't have room to hide. He didn't sit. He paced. Like something inside him was cracking open. "You used to talk to me. When I was in that place between. You were the only one." She nodded, silent. "You called me Tiga. Said I wasn't gone yet. I didn't understand, but I felt it. Tosin, she began, but her voice failed. Tell me, he said. Please. I want the truth. So she told him everything about the ghost on her bed when she was 5. The prophet. The silence. The years of pretending. And then him. The ghost who didn't fade. She expected disbelief. Laughter. Maybe worse. But Tosin just stood there, eyes glassy, head bowed. You saw me, he whispered. When no one else did. And then something broke in her, months of quiet carrying, of aching and hiding and hoping. I thought you'd never remember, she sobbed. I thought I'd have to carry it alone forever. He crossed the space between them and held her, tight, warm. Real, you're not alone, he said. Not anymore. And for the first time in her life, Priscilla didn't feel like a liar or a freak. She felt heard. They didn't fall in love all at once. There was no dramatic kiss in the rain. No sweeping orchestral moment. No fairy tale speech under fairy lights. It happened in the slow, ordinary things. In the way Tosin waited outside her office at lunchtime, even on days when she said she was fine. In the way Priscilla reminded him to eat when he got too absorbed in work. In the way they walked side by side down the corridor, no longer avoiding eye contact, no longer pretending. The next time it rained, they stood together by her window, watching it streak down the glass. Neither said anything. But Tosin reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Later that week, he told her what it had felt like. The coma. The liminal space, it was like floating inside someone else's memory. I couldn't hold on to anything. Except your voice. She smiled gently. You used to complain I talked too much. I did, he laughed. She nodded. Once you told me to shut up because you were dead and needed peace. He grinned. Sounds like me. They didn't label what they were. Not at first. But it was there, in the way he saved the last plantain chips for her, in the way she learned to recognize when his silence meant thinking, not withdrawal. One night, they sat outside her apartment under the almond tree, the one she always mentioned in her stories. The same kind of tree she had once cried under when he disappeared for 3 days. I used to think I was cursed, she said quietly, watching the branches sway. Seeing things no one else could. Losing everyone who got too close. Tosin leaned back against the trunk, close enough that their shoulders touched. Maybe it wasn't a curse. Maybe you were just waiting for someone who could see it too. She looked at him. And what do you see? He met her gaze. You. She didn't cry this time. She didn't have to. They stayed that way, leaning, quiet, steady. Weeks later, he introduced her to a new team at Allied Tech. Not as an intern. But as one of the senior project analysts. She didn't need everyone to believe her story. Just one person had been enough. One person who remembered her voice in the dark. One person who chose her in the light. And so, the ghost who forgot her became the man who stood beside her. And the girl who had spent her whole life helping others find peace finally found hers.